This show is sponsored by Den 10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den 10, you're giving back on a global scale. Hello, all my entrepreneurs and business leaders, and welcome to the Michael Esposito Show, where I interview titans of industry in order to inform, educate, and inspire you to be great. My guest today is a Platinum Lions member with Tony Robbins and has used his skill set to accelerate his We Level Up drug, alcohol abuse, and mental illness treatment facility into a $100 million company. Being in the proximity of Tony Robbins enhanced his ability to change lives, impact others, and helped them become the best version of themselves. He is now sober for 21 years, and he is a successful businessman, transformational coach, and motivational speaker. He shares personal development techniques that measurably enhance relationships, performance, and mindset. He is developing his own brand to influence the rest of the world, to unveil their true, best, and higher selves. Please welcome my guest today, Ryan Zofay. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, my man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, very, very happy to have you on. Just tremendous work that you're doing. We're going to certainly get into your story, but just looking at the website at We Level Up, just a tremendous amount of work that you're putting in there. You just gave me a high level, a 30,000 foot view of what you do in 5 states, 450 employees, just helping people. And this all derives from your own personal experience. So much to unpack in terms of your opening of Tony Robbins and your mentors and coaching and all the stuff that you're doing today. But I mean, when we're in the rehabilitation space, there's always a personal story and a connection to it all. And I know our audience would like to hear yours.
Yeah, brother. Thank you so much. And it's interesting, like as you're sitting here telling me these accolades, I'm like, it's hard to like digest. It's like wild that like, this is literally the life that I'm living. And, and you reference, having a personal story and just realizing like what I've been through. And there was a time when I had this victim mentality and I would walk around with this story of like, if you knew what I went through, then you would understand like why I'm being such a shithead, blaming everybody for all my problems. But the truth is now I've been able to shift my perspective. And I know the very reason why I'm in the position that I'm in today is because of all those traumatic experiences that I went through as a child. And so I'm honored and blessed. And I want to praise my parents for what they have done for me. If you're going to blame your parents for the bad, you better blame them for the good. And,
I love that.
Yeah, dude, I have a pretty badass life. So thanks, mom and dad. Yeah, they're no longer here, but I know they're smiling down. Yeah, man. So it all started, dude, when I was 5 years old. My sister passed away, and it devastated my parents. My mother and father shortly after divorced. My mother was blaming my father for how he was showing up during that whole time. She ended up like leaving the home and she started dating another gentleman. And it was very confusing for me. In my mind, I just lost my sister. During that whole time, they would always pass me off to my grandparents' house. I would stay with, my father's parents or my mother's parents because they were too busy dealing with what they were dealing with. But the message that I got at that time was like, I'm not important enough, or they don't love me, or they don't care much about me. And so when my mother and father divorced, right shortly after my sister passed, my mom moved on to another relationship. And so, and immediately I'm like establishing these beliefs that she's choosing another man over me, and my dad played that fiddle as well. My dad was, feeding that because he was upset and resentful that his wife, my mother, left him. And so, my mother ended up remarrying and having another child. And so by the time I was 9 years old, my mother was in like a full-blown addictive relationship with this man. Her drug use progressed to, crack cocaine, it was very serious. And so my first real like traumatic experience, it was around 9 years old, shortly after my brother was born. I came home from school and my father was in the kitchen, drinking alcohol. And as I was like walking by to avoid him, he's like, "Hey," he said, your mother just got shot and she's probably not going to live." And I was just like, "What?" Like, are you serious? Like what, and it was just like so nonchalant. And it was like such a devastating experience for me at 9 years old. And like mindful, like I haven't really seen much of my mom through this time because she's now remarried to this other man. And so this was actually the first time that I actually considered like killing myself. Like the pain was so great and it was so devastating that I didn't want to live anymore. Like my mom was gone. My father was absent. He was an alcoholic, very abusive. And now you're telling me that she's shot and she's no longer going to live. And by the grace of God, she made it. And she got shot in the neck at a point blank range with a 357, which is like a hand bazooka. And she lived. So, God bless her for being able to get through that stuff. Sorry. So yeah, it was just devastating, man. It was just overwhelming. And I couldn't believe that was what was going on at that time in my life. And then here's the crazy part, right? So she gets out, he goes to prison for like 6 to 9 months. He gets out of jail. She gets back with him. She goes back to the relationship.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
It's wild. So think about it. Like here I am now at this point, I'm like 10, almost turning 11. And I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you choosing to go back to this man that almost just murdered you? And, I understand like it's battered women syndrome at this point. I understand, so I understand her psychology and the mentality at the time, what she was thinking. And then probably like 4 or 5 months later, they get in another big fight and he ends up stabbing her 13 times. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And she survived that too. So I God bless her for being able to go through that stuff. She's probably one of the strongest people I've ever met in my life. And so at this point in my life, I'm 11 years old. I think I want to live with my mom because I'm like, all right, like clearly she's not able to protect herself. And so at 11 years old, I'm like, I need to be the one. I need to be the one to go there and protect her. And I was just so scared that if I wasn't near her, then I would lose her. And so I started living with her and she continued on her drug use. And so then I started using drugs at age 11. And by the time I was 12 years old, I was a full-blown drug addict. She was using me to support her means of getting high. So I was, stealing cars, breaking into houses, stealing money from my father. She would bring me to shopping plazas and she would have me steal old people's purses. And so by the time I was 14 years old, I was arrested. I robbed a store with a handgun and I had like 5 or 6 counts of grand theft auto, a handful of counts of armed burglary, criminal mischief. And that was like the first time like my life kind of paused. And I ended up going to a program for 9 months. And I was 14 years old when this happened. So, it was severe charges, but because I was so young, there was really no, there was really not a lot of programs around at this time. And so I ended up going to a drug program up in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. It was a 9-month program. I spent probably like 6 months in juvie. So total, it was a little over a year and 3 months. And so I get out and my parents are still using and I had no safe environment, no safe home. And I went right back to the streets, right back to what was comfortable for me. And I ended up getting arrested again. This time it was like violations, some petty charges, like possession. And so I did a few months in another drug program. I think it was like 90-day program. And then I ended up getting out again. And so I'm 16 years old at this point. I really don't have much of a relationship with my mother, but what actually started to happen, which was really cool and which I'm extremely grateful for, is that she ended up getting sober. So she went to a 12-step program and she got sober. And during the year when I was 16, she kept trying to like intervene, but I was like so angry and so resentful. I had no trust because of like what I've been through with her. So why am I going to listen to you now? So I was in total revenge. October 8th, 2001, I was driving in the front seat of my best friend's car at the time, and I was up partying all weekend. I violated probation again. I had like a pocket full of Xanax, and I remembered like the drugs weren't working anymore. And I remember like looking at him and saying, "Hey, like I'm not feeling it. Are you feeling it anymore?" And it was a time in my life when like the drugs weren't working. I wasn't able to get high. It was like literally I was just doing this just to numb myself, just to cope with the pain of what I've been through. And so we ended up taking like a handful more. I don't really remember much after that, but I do recall, we got in a high-speed chase. We ended up wrecking the car. I was flown out of the car. I was pronounced dead at the scene. I was trauma hawked to the hospital. That was October 8th, 2001. So October 9th, 2001 is when my sobriety date starts. But here I am. I'm in juvie, and I'm looking at 25 to life. And so that was literally like my childhood up until 16. That was like a quick overview of like where my recovery journey began.
Man, and there's still more to unpack from what I learned from you. First of all, I always need to just create some space here and thank you for sharing your story and your journey there, because it's heavy stuff, man. I mean, just me here listening, I'm emotional, just listening to your story, because I can't imagine your experience and what you had to go through and the feelings that you had to have to think about suicide, to witness what you witnessed with your parents, and then eventually go through it yourself. Just want to say, thank you for finding a way. But I do have a lot of questions to ask in terms of all of that story there that you shared. So thank you again for your authenticity there and for sharing all of that. And anybody out there listening right now, if you're listening, dealing with addiction, have somebody in your family, know somebody, please take this story, reach out to Ryan right now, reach out to him and his team, and get some help for them, because as we just heard in this story here, is like as soon as mom got sober, it started at least the upward trend for you to get sober too. So, like this story is just, it's incredible that you survived. It's incredible that you survived. I want to understand a few things here. In the drug use for yourself at 11 years old, what was the drug that you were using, and why? I don't want to put blame on anybody else, but I feel like our communities need to take some sort of responsibility for the kids in it. In that, why didn't school teachers, why didn't other adults in the community see that you were using and offer some sort of help?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I don't really, I didn't really go to school much, like that was, that's what was so interesting. I didn't really have an opportunity for people to see much of what was going on. And so I don't think there was an opportunity for them to intervene. Like the last grade I completed was sixth grade was the last grade I actually completed. So I was a seventh grade dropout.
Wow.
And yeah, man, I mean, my grandparents, they attempted to step in and help, but they were just enabling my parents, and they didn't know any better. I mean, you're talking, I'm 38 years old. So this was started when I was 11. So, what is that, 27 years ago? And domestic violence wasn't a thing at that point. And, and there was really no programs for like, recovery wasn't such a big thing at this point. And so there wasn't really an understanding of like what to do or how to handle this situation, and that's kind of the consensus that I got.
Yeah, I think, and what you're expressing too is, I think it's the conversation, right? Because there were definitely drug and addiction rehab centers, and same thing with domestic violence, but the conversations around it, there certainly is a shame and a feeling of all of that surrounds it, from what I hear from people who I've interviewed and spoken with about this. But there wasn't a conversation and openness like what you're doing right now. And that's why, it's like so important to have people like you share your message and share your story, because that's where somebody who is experiencing it can relate and can maybe seek some help. So they probably weren't talking about it much. Yeah. So I this is a bit of more of 11 years old using drugs. What was it? Weed? Was it pills? Was it?
Yeah. So the first thing I did was I smoked weed. That was like cool. It was like socially accepted by my parents, or my mom, really. My dad didn't really want, much anything to do with that. But, and then it was alcohol. And then at that point I was like, anything I can get my hands on, I'm taking. My mother was, a pill user, and then she transitioned into crack cocaine. So I know she would always mix between the two. So thank God I never smoked crack, but it was pretty much anything I get my hands on. And alcohol was a big part of my story for sure.
Yeah.
Because it was easy, accessible. It was cheap. And you didn't need a lot of money to get messed up.
Yeah, and you spoke about this revenge that you had, this revenge feeling, and I know in a lot of the talks that you do and the self-development work that you do, you talk about overcoming adversity and overcoming all of these different obviously challenges. Revenge is one that we don't hear a lot about, and you brought that up about this revengeful behavior. I'm interested if you could kind of share what that looks like a little bit, or how to identify or how to help somebody heal.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, it really came in the form of feeling like I received something from my parents that I didn't deserve, and feeling like they were doing it to me. Right. I personalized what they were doing, and I personalized that for a very, very long time. I mean, we're talking maybe the last 4 or 5 years, I've been able to really forgive and really understand and have empathy for what I've been through with them. And it's really just my perspective, right? At that time I had a perspective of how dare you treat me like that? How, it's not fair. What about me? And so there's this unconscious decision that happens where it's I'm so upset, and they're the cause of why my life is so shitty. And that was my story for so long, was I am who I am in this world because of what you have done to me. And I'm going to make you pay for that because I'm not happy with where I'm at. And so, and what I've experienced in this life is that a lot of people are in positions in life that they don't want to be in. And it's very easy to point the finger to those around us to be the cause of why we are where we are.
Right.
And so for me, what I had to do is take responsibility, because I can't change what has happened.
Right.
I can change the perspective of what happened, right? Because that's all I have is my perception of the facts, because my facts might be different than your facts, right? If it's interesting, if there's been studies done, if twins grow up in the same household and you interview them separately, they're both going to give you two completely different experiences of their life. And so that was so huge for me, because once I realized that I can shift my perspective and not personalize it, and understand that they were going through their own challenges, they were going through their own traumas and their own, addictions, and really it had nothing to do with me. Unfortunately, I was a byproduct. There's casualty when parents decide to use drugs and not parent the way that they need to parent. And so that's my understanding of revenge and what I've learned through that.
Yeah. And I mean, we're definitely going to talk about your relationship with Tony Robbins, but I mean, he always talks about it doesn't happen to you. It happens for you, which is interesting because, in all of this, look at what you've been able to create and the amount of lives you're able to impact today through this childhood that you've been able to overcome, which is tremendous. And just another shout out to one of my guests, Sari, who was on, and her podcast will be live soon. But she talked very similar about this, a very similar upbringing, abusive household, things like that. And her brother went one direction, addiction and locked up and all the rest. And she went in a total different direction. And, I asked her that question of like what you just brought out about the twins in that same household. And she said, yeah, it's really, perception and how we see things from different angles and different points of view and everything. So it's tremendous when you do change your perception on something, how it can impact or change your life. So you have this experience, you get through it all. I'm interested because there's before we get into your business life, which when you become a commodities broker, before we get there, your path to sobriety came from this accident. And I have to assume that there was a lot of pain that went into that initially. And so if you can just help us just understand too how, October 9th, your new birthday, how that started changing your life and how you were able to take on rehabilitation.
Yeah, so that was probably the first best thing that could have happened to me, is actually getting in that automobile accident and getting locked up. And because I remember sitting there, and this was the first time that I stopped fighting. This was the first time that I actually surrendered to my situation, because I literally had nothing I could do. There's no choices. I was done. And from based on what the state's attorney was telling me, that if I came back into juvie ever again, they were going to give me my full sentence. They were going to send me to a level 10 program, which was a juvenile max prison. And then once I turned 18, they were going to send me away to prison for 25 to life. And so just digesting that was just devastating to me. My life was over. And what was so cool about it, that, the 12-step program teaches you have to surrender in order to get sober. You have to surrender your life and your will over to God and trust and live his will. And so I knew at this point there was nothing I could do. My mother came into the program and she was sober, and she started introducing me to this new way of life. And this was like the first time that she actually showed up for me. And so I needed a little bit of support. I needed that at that time. I needed somebody else to believe in me, because I sure as hell didn't believe in myself. And so she was like, there's no way I'm letting you go away. And so the next 9 months I was trying to fight the case so that I wouldn't get the new charges, which would ultimately send me away for, pretty much a large portion of my life, if not the rest of it. And so the day of sentencing, the judge was like, you know what, I don't feel like it's in our best interest to send you away. Your mother has a compelling story. I understand a lot of the reasons why you are here was directly correlated to how she raised you and the traumas and the things that you went through. And so he says, I'm going to give you another chance. And so what was really cool about that moment for me, I didn't know it at the time, after meeting Tony, that was a pivotal moment in my life that allowed me to really forgive, because I realized, like, yes, all the years prior was painful, was devastating, was in complete revenge. But that was the best gift that I have been ever granted in my entire life, is my sobriety. And that came from my mother. And so just have nothing but gratitude for her. And I definitely would not be where I am today if it wasn't for that moment.
Yeah. And the compassion that judge showed you, I mean, it just speaks volumes about how somebody can affect somebody else's life. That judge could make a decision to send you away. And then we don't have you. We don't have all the facilities that you've created and all the work that you're doing today. And so it's I think about, like, one person can change the life of many. And right there, to what you just shared with that story, is like that judge just changed the life of thousands of people, if not millions, to come with what you're doing today. So that is a huge, huge pivotal moment, like you just said. So did you meet Tony right after that, or that's later on in life?
That's later on in life. Yeah, August 2018.
Okay. And so now you got this new life ahead of you. Things are going smooth. You're like, all right, I'm sober, I'm clean. I got this new life. I've surrendered to it. I've overcome addiction. I've overcome all of these challenges, abuse, and all this other stuff. You get into commodity trading, and I'm just going to leave it there for you to take the ball and roll with it about, where does this story take us?
Yeah, so 2001, I get sober. I get out of juvie. I go through my program, and I'm like the poster child of this 12-step program. And my mother and my now third or fourth stepfather, they have a great reputation in recovery where I'm from. So everybody knew me when I got into the program, and so it was like welcome me with open arms. And the fact that I was sober so young, I was able to impact and influence a lot of younger kids in recovery. And so like I was always the youngest kid the youngest and the smallest kid when I would live on the streets and hang out with those kids. So I was always like bullied, or I was always like forced to do the things I didn't really want to do. And so this was the first like moment or experience where I was like popular, like people like really liked me. And it felt amazing. And so that lasted for about five and a half years. And my mother relapsed. My biological father was diagnosed with cancer, and they told him he had a year to live. And so like all those abandonment issues, all those childhood traumas were re-triggered. And I felt like I was all alone, which I understand today. Like I isolated myself and I chose those decisions to push people away because again, I started getting resentful and I was in revenge again because I'm personalizing their problems. And so my next decision was like, all right, I need to make money. Like I'm tired of just doing this normal 9 to 5 stuff, and I want to be successful. And so I met a gentleman who was a commodity broker, and he started to tell me how much money he was making, and that was my new drug. And so I started commodities in 2007, and shortly after, probably like 6 months in, I realized that a lot of the people that were investing money weren't making money. They were losing money because options, 95% of options, I believe the percentages expire worthless. So most, 90 something percent of people lose money if they continue. It's like gambling, right? The house always wins. And so there was a moment when I was able to make a decision to stop. And what's so interesting is I go home. I was living with my grandparents at this time. And I went to my grandfather and I was like expressing to him like how I was really having a hard time in this business. And he was like, well, son, he's like, well, you're uneducated. You dropped out of 6th grade. You have a GED. You never went to college. So he like completely shit on me. And I don't think he did it intentionally. That's just where he was. And that was like, it really just like just poked my wound. And I was like, all right, I'll show you. And so like, I was trying to like stop. I was trying to get some support for him. Probably didn't know how to communicate what I was trying to say. And so then I went back into the office the following week and I continued, and that career lasted about 5 years. And I ended up getting sued April 12th, or April 2012. I was sued by the FTC for $10 million. And it was devastating, dude, because I couldn't believe this is where I was at. I couldn't believe I found myself here. Having known everything that I've been through, having gone through recovery and being still sober at this time, I'm sober, but I'm acting out in all the behaviors, but I just wasn't using at the time. I go home after being sued by the FTC and my fiance leaves me. And so it was one of the most devastating times. I can tell you today, that was another pivotal moment in my life, which actually paved the path to where I'm at today.
Yeah. I need to understand something here. So was this like a boiler room type of thing? Because I didn't think that a commodities trader was illegal, or was it that you were doing some things that were not ethical, I guess, or something?
Sure. So, it was regulated by the NFA, and I did get suspended by the National Futures Association. And then I started selling unregulated precious metals.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah. So it was like physical bullion, but we were doing like finance contracts. And so Obama passed Dodd-Frank, and then the FTC started to regulate that space. he put a lot of banking restrictions in place as well. And so the market, literally, I was trading gold and silver, and they increased margin requirements, and gold went from like 2,300 down to like 1,200. Silver was at 50, went down to like 20, like within like 2 weeks. So like my entire book was smoked because everything's on margin. And so then I started getting a ton of complaints, and then the FTC sued me for the 10 million, and I ended up settling the case. All the claims and accusations weren't founded, but I knew morally and ethically I wasn't doing what I'm intended to do on this earth. People lost money. I made a lot of commission. It wasn't aligned with my values. And so we settled the case that I would never, trade precious metals ever again, which I didn't care because I wanted to be done with that.
Yeah, no, that's pretty crazy, but it's funny, not funny, but it's interesting. I think, people who come from addiction, how they find different addictions, and it manifests its way into different ways of, sneaker addiction or cars. And like you just said, money was your new addiction. I'm interested in, is that something that you see today with a lot of the people that you work with? And if it is something, how do you help them realize that, it's not alcohol and it's not a drug like that you're getting high off of, in terms of like the way that drugs get you high. But this thing that you're doing is probably not healthy to your sobriety.
Yeah. I mean, making a lot of money, an ego, releases the similar endorphins that you receive when you take drugs or alcohol. And so usually if you remove one addiction or one pattern, another one will pop up unless you really develop a spiritual relationship that will satisfy that itch or satisfy that addiction. And so, right when my mom relapsed and my dad, was diagnosed with cancer, I stopped working my program. I stopped doing the things that I needed to do to establish that relationship with my higher power. And then I was looking for my next drug. I know I didn't want to use. I knew that wasn't a decision I wanted to make. And so the next best decision for me was like ego and greed. It fed that addiction, because, alcoholics and drug addicts, it's a behavior. We have behavioral issues. A lot of it is based on our attitude and our inability to have, positive thinking or decision-making skills. Like our ability to make decisions on our own at times are very difficult unless we have some sort of spiritual conditioning, which gives us some guidance. And that's what a 12-step program does for you. It gives you a design for living. And once you continue to practice that, you start to develop these new patterns and these new reps, which carry over in every other area of life.
Yeah. It like the drug impairs, or the drug addict's mind is impaired. Their judgment is impaired based off of that dopamine fix, I guess, that they're searching for. They're going for it. So now you experience all this. Now, as fiance leaves you, you're pretty much into dumps. The spiritualness, you're saying this is really what saves you in all of this. And, I've spoken about this before on the podcast. I don't look at, I try to I respect all religions and all belief systems and everything. But for me personally, I'm not a religious person. And what I identify as religion would be like Catholic religion, Jewish religion, or Muslim religion, or whatever it is that someone practices. I think that I'm more of a spiritual person. And so I'm interested in what you relate to as spiritualism and how that helped you and helps you today.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it has to do with like detaching from the outcome and just really like accepting yourself for who you are and where you are in the very moment, and just doing good by society. I mean, making positive decisions, looking to serve or to give back or to make a difference in somebody else's life, I feel like is a practice that would ultimately align with spirituality.
Yeah. And it's interesting like that you bring up spirituality too, because my daughter right now, Denise, is making her first communion. And she asked me the other night, she goes, you're always talking about the spirits and God and how, there's not, how what you believe in God, but then I'm making my first communion and I believe in God, and you're always, and I said to her, I'm always just trying to get you to question what's going on in terms of God and its and his or her or its existence, and whether there is one or isn't one, I can't tell you that. That's for you to decide. But I'm always just trying to figure that out. So when I hear that we're kind of like surrendering to this higher being and surrendering to their plan or what God has set for me or things like that, I wonder what does that really mean to you? Because I have a different interpretation of it for me personally. So I would like to try to understand from someone who obviously has surrendered to that higher being, what it means. Like, what does it look like? What does it feel like when you do that?
Yeah. So for me, there's just this unbelievable sense of like serenity and peace, because I just know that no matter what decisions I make, that whatever is going to be. And I get it. Like if you're making bad decisions, you're going to get shitty results. But if you're on this path of truly just giving yourself to a higher being, then that means you're truly like serving, or you're making decisions that are in the best interest of everybody else around you, not just you. And so it's important for me to do that, because, drug addicts and alcoholics are, our core is selfish and self-centeredness. And so the idea to give myself to somebody else, or to give my faith or my trust into something that's bigger than me, that means I'm being selfless in that act. And I'm choosing to do something for somebody else rather than doing something for myself. And so that practice has significantly changed my entire trajectory of my life, which is why I believe I am where I am today, because my entire life, my design of living today is built around serving everybody else. How can I improve everybody else's lives around me? How can I make a difference? How can I impact your life? What can I do to change the trajectory of somebody's life? Which is why I've decided to start doing these podcasts and speaking on stage, because I know I have a higher purpose. I know my mission here on earth is to help other people that are struggling or that have been through the things that I've been through. You can get through that. You can overcome that. And you can actually create a life that is beyond your wildest dreams. And that's what I'm living. That's a living example that I have today. So I feel like I have a fiduciary responsibility, because I should not be here right now, right? So the fact that I lost my life and some reason, somehow I made it, the fact that I got sued by the FTC and I ended up settling the case and everything was okay, that's something beyond me. That was out of my control. And so if I continue to look throughout my life and see how many magical moments have happened for me, that lets me know that there's something bigger than me. That lets me know that there's something guiding me, because in those situations, I mean, think about it. How many people that are incarcerated today? There's a lot of people that don't have the gift that was given to me. So for some reason, something else above me gave me this beautiful gift.
I love that, magical moments. Yeah, and I'm so happy that you articulated it that way. It really is beautiful. This I understand this selflessness and to do things for others. Like, I get great joy out of that too. I mean, that's why we have the podcast. I mean, it started from a selfish reason to want to learn from entrepreneurs, but I'm so happy that I'm able to give it to others. Because I mean, I could interview people by myself if I just wanted it for me, but I do it because I want to share it with others. So I really can. That resonates with me a lot, and you articulated that really, really well. I love the magical moments. That's really cool, because you're right. Like, we all have these magical moments in our lives where we, like, I know for myself that I've had these life or death situations. I had a skiing accident. This shoulder here is completely gone. You see, it's completely gone because I had a skiing accident where I went flying over 30 feet in the air. Yeah, I actually remember the air time. That's how long I was in the air for. It's wild. Yeah, I hit a pipeline. I was flying down the mountain, and I was skiing fast and recklessly, quite honestly, and I hit a pipeline and got ejected from my boots, from my skis. I was still in my boots. ejected from my skis and just went flying in the air. And I remember the airtime. And my cousin had just passed away. I think it was a year or two prior to that. So it was like really, I guess that's probably why I really remember the airtime that well, because I remember thinking like, I hope I can live out of this while thinking of him. And then I crashed and my arm was completely dislocated and annihilated. But I think back at that moment and I'm like, man, like I lived. like you just said, like people die falling on a sidewalk. You know, they hit their head and they're dead. And meanwhile, I went 30 feet in the air, went somersaulting through the sky, land. And the worst that happened was I got a busted shoulder for the rest of my life. Big deal. You know, like just I love how you call it magical moments. And if we can see those little moments, then you know, we can overcome anything really. And I think about the people that you just mentioned of like who are incarcerated or who are going through trauma and everything. If they can find, if they can be helped to find those magical moments in their lives, I think that they might be able to find that serenity that you just spoke about. And some of them, unfortunately, are in positions that it might not change their circumstance, but at least mentally they'll be in a better place. So speaking about getting into a better place mentally, you obviously overcame a tremendous amount for a second time around. And then you're like, all right, what's next? You know, like I fixed this whole FTC thing. I got this whole thing done. And now you're on this path to change the world and impact people's lives in a positive way. And so I'm interested on how the treatment facilities start coming about. I know you said you obviously started with one, but how does this start coming about? How do you start building this?
Yeah. So the year I was sued, I took that whole year off, get plugged back into the program and really get back into my, what I know worked when I first got into the program. But then I also went to a place called Onsite, which I think they've been around for like 35 years or so. And they deal with like inner child trauma. They deal with they teach experiential therapy. So I went there. And that was really the first time I started to understand, or I felt like people understood why I was behaving the way I was behaving. So I felt like, wait a minute, maybe I'm not, maybe I am normal. Like maybe I am okay. Like maybe I'm not some defect, like I just couldn't understand. Like, dude, I'm like, how the hell did I get here? Because like in one instance, I'm like, I'm a good guy. But then on this other instance, I'm like a wild maniac. And I'm like, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, which is what they talk about in recovery. But then I started to understand why I'm making these decisions. And I started to trace back all my childhood traumas, like specific moments, specific times that created these belief systems, because we make decisions based on what we believe. And so everything started to trace back to when I was a child and all the different moments and all the different times that I felt abandoned, or I felt like I wasn't important, or I felt I wasn't cared for, or I felt like, it was done to me. And so one of their processes is to really, get inspired and like, what is your biggest dream? And like, what do you really want to be known for? Like, what's your legacy going to be? And I remembered when I first got sober, I used to be really involved with halfway houses, like guys in recovery that are in transition from like newly in sobriety to trying to be integrated into society. So they have these like sober homes where it's like a structured environment. And so I spent a lot of time like involved with that community. And so I realized that like I wanted to be in the substance abuse business because I felt so inspired to help people. And I was like, this is what I want to be known for. And so I knew a couple friends that were in the space and they were like super successful. I really had no idea about the business at all. I don't really have much business experience at this time outside of just, having an investment firm, which a lot of that had to do with like my own, I didn't like really manage much people. It was like me like developing relationships. And so I didn't really have much business experience going through the commodities, although I did learn a ton about sales. I realized that, the only way for me to get in this space was to like partner with somebody or to find somebody that wasn't doing so well. And I could add value with sales. I could add value with like marketing. And so my father bought into a company And I worked there as like the marketing director and the sales director. And shortly after us buying into the company, we found out the reason why the company was failing was the guy that we were partnering with. And so we ended up buying him out. And shortly after that, we had a very successful year. And my father, realized that like I've changed my ways. I'm not behaving the way I used to behave. And then I started to partner in the facilities moving forward. And so, fast forward 10 years, here I am. We have 9 facilities in 5 states. 4 of them are open today. We're opening up 2 or 3 more this year. And, we currently have 450 employees, which is just astonishing to me. And it's been a beautiful journey. And it's all been about serving. It's the core of every decision that we make is like, how can we save people's lives? Like, how can we make a difference? How can we influence or inspire somebody to be the best versions of themselves? And that approach has allowed me to be in the position that I'm in today, which I'm extremely grateful for.
Yeah, I mean, you built a tremendous business. That's for darn sure. It's an understatement of what you've done. I just want to go back to your dad. So, dad's sober, then diagnosed with cancer. So, he was part of this business with you, and he recently passed. You said.
He passed December 24th, 2020.
Okay. Yeah. So I just want to acknowledge both of your parents too, if you would like to share their names here.
Yeah. Francis Zofay is my father, and then my mother is Lisa Zofay.
Yeah. So rest in peace to both of them. Of course, like you said, they gave you quite a story, huh?
Well, that's what I mean, right? It's all perspective. I got the more challenging, traumatic times you go through, the better it is for storytelling.
I remember I used to listen to a radio show, Ron and Fez. And this guy, Ron, one of the radio hosts, would talk about, just do it for the story. Like he would just talk about like doing these like wild and crazy things or these like, just embarrassing moments, just to do something embarrassing. He's like, I just did it for the story. And it's like, so it's incredible sometimes, what you get out of it. But so now you have this beautiful business, and you're still growing, still doing so much more. You have an entrepreneur program. You're giving back through all these different programs. And something I asked you about before we got on air, and I would love for you to share more about while we're on this topic of rehabilitation and your story and your journey. You mentioned that when you're speaking, you typically speak about overcoming adversity. And I would love for you to share a little bit about that and, just, if there's one person right now who's listening, and if you could speak to them right now, and, they're dealing with their challenges, they're having the inner child problem, they're going through it right now. If you could speak with them right now about overcoming adversity, what would you be able to share with them?
Yeah. And so it's really like your focus, right? So like there was a time, I think we talked about it a couple of times. It's like your perspective, right? If I'm looking at my life from the lens of a victim, and I'm personalizing what's going on, then I'm going to experience disempowering emotions. And so, what you focus on, you feel. And so you just mentioned it, like do it for the story. I literally shift my perspective and I look at my life from that lens of gratitude. Like I have the ability today to be on shows, to talk about these problems, to help other people. And so like what you focus on, you feel. And so if I'm focusing on what's wrong, if I'm focusing on what I don't have, then I'm going to feel those negative emotions. But if I'm focusing on what I do have, if I'm focusing on what I can control, then I'm going to feel grace, and I'm going to feel joy and happiness. And the mind is a meaning making mechanism, right? Our minds are designed to give moments meaning. And so, which is a choice. You can give any moment in time, any meaning you want. And so I used to give all my experiences disempowering meanings, like poor me, if you knew what I went through. And I shifted my focus. I started coming from a place of gratitude, and I gave it a different meaning. And so that has given me the leverage that I have needed to continue down this path of growth. And so if you are suffering, if you're feeling stuck, rather than asking yourself a disempowering question, ask yourself a different question. Ask yourself, how is this moment or this experience been a gift for me? What are all the gifts that this event has given me? And your mind will find the answer, right? Your mind is a problem-solving mechanism as well. Your mind is designed to answer questions. That is the biological makeup of the human mind. And so if you ask yourself a shitty question, you're going to get yourself a shitty answer. So if you ask yourself an empowering question, like, what are the gifts in this? Then your mind is going to give you the answer. And so it's learning how to leverage your unconscious mind. And so like what Tony teaches and a lot of the stuff that I've learned over the years is you start to develop this unconscious competence, because 95% of what we're doing on a daily basis is underneath our awareness. We're not even aware of what's going on. And so, and the design of that is to keep us alive, right? That is the unconscious brain. That is the design for us, is to scan the horizon, to find what's wrong so that it can ultimately keep us alive. And so your brain is designed to focus on what's wrong. Your brain is designed to find what's bad in every situation. And so in order to overcome that, you have to shift your focus. You have to give your life a different meaning. And all of a sudden, you'll start to change the trajectory of your life.
I made some notes here on this, and I wrote, ask empowering questions. Not the first time I heard it, but the first time it resonated. Just tremendous, and so much more in there. And I mean, like Tony talks about, where focus goes, energy flows. Is that right? Or is it the other way around? And I think about, I've taken courses in manifesting and manifestation, and that's essentially what manifestation is. It's asking your mind open-ended questions, empowering questions, so that it can unconsciously come to the solution and eventually manifest into a beautiful thing. And to your point, if you're asking it negative questions, then it's manifesting in a negative way, but we can make it manifest in positive ways. So directly mentored by Tony Robbins. This is incredible. I've spoken about this countless amount of times on the podcast, but it never goes without saying, in that, Tony Robbins is one of the first mentors of mine. I downloaded his CDs into MP3s, and I would my little personal journey that I've shared before, but for your sake here. I was unemployed. I was in between jobs. I had just been fired, and my mother-in-law was coming. She didn't know. My mother-in-law was coming over to watch the kids, and I made believe like I was going to work, because I was embarrassed. I had shame. I didn't want anybody to know that I was unemployed. And so I would take his CDs, his tapes that I had downloaded, and I would go to the local hotel, and I would take his courses and take notes and learn and start trying to apply what I was learning from him in real life, and eventually getting my life back on track. So Tony Robbins is somebody that I'm always very interested when I meet somebody like yourself who had a direct communication with him. So I'm very interested in that relationship, how it went about, where it is today. If you could share some more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So my introduction to him was through my ex-fiance. So I've had two fiancés. The third time's a charm. So yeah. But I was in a toxic relationship. A lot of those, childhood traumas bled over into my relationship, and I've, since then have made drastic strides in that area. But her and I broke up, and she went to a Tony event, and she was like, "Oh my God, you have to meet him." So she actually booked me a ticket. And so I was supposed to go January 2018, but because it was her idea, and I was like I was in revenge with her too. I was like, I'm not going. That's bullshit. I tried to cancel. They wouldn't let me cancel. She put it on her card. And so they're like, look, it was like an $8,000 ticket, which she like maxed out her credit card so that I can go. And I was so pissed off, and I was like, I didn't want to go. And I missed the one in January, but then somebody called me from Tony Robbins that was able to speak to where I was at on my journey. And he's like, look, man, he's like, just come to the event. If you, after day one, decide this isn't for you and it's not worth the money, we will refund your money. And so in my mind, I'm like, well, this is how I'm going to get her money back. And then it was in Vegas. So a part of me was like, well, I'll get to go to Vegas, have fun. I'll go to one day and I'm out. I went to Tony Robbins day one. By the end of that day one, I signed up for Platinum Partnership. And so I just want to be clear. This is an $85,000 investment. So I went there, like, I'm getting my 8K back. F you, Tony Robbins. F you, Raquel. And I'm going to spend the $8,000 in Vegas. Well, I ended up spending $85,000 and became a platinum partner. And so that's when my journey began. And so it was so crazy because I remembered like I started my journey in like row 60. I was like so scared, but I was always interested to like see who was up front. And I used to see these chairs with like names on them. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And so then finally I find out that was Tony's like inner circle, the Lions. And then I find out the only way that you're going to become a Lion is you have to be invited in. And there has to be something that you're going to bring to the community. And I was like, oh, I'm never going to get accepted in because what am I going to bring? What is a junkie that, shoestrings and bubblegum at this point, in my journey with my company? Like I haven't really scaled my company at this point. Like I was doing decent success, but nothing compared to where I'm at today. And I was like, I'm never going to get in. But I started learning about limiting beliefs. I started learning about, I can shift my perspective and I can tell myself a different story. And so then immediately I was like, you know what, like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to become a Lion. And so I started to meet the people that were like in charge of like vetting you when as a Lion. And what I started to notice is a very similar theme is they were like so impressed with me. They were like bragging about me because of like what I've been through and the fact that I was there. So here I am like feeling like I'm never going to add any value to all of a sudden feeling like the poster child again. And I was like, oh my God. And so I became like a fan favorite in Tony. And I went to his home for the first time in June 2020. Unbelievable, man. Such a beautiful soul. The guy is unbelievable. And so that's when I started my personal development journey. So June or July of 2020, right after the pandemic, I watched Tony go from a thriving success, 4 or 5 seminars a month to literally everything getting shut down, him literally almost going bankrupt, him applying everything that he teaches. So the pandemic happened, right? And so all live seminars, the whole world got shut down, right? So like COVID prevented everybody from doing live seminars or shows. So like his whole business was built around seminars. And so I watched him literally shift his whole perspective, give it a different meaning. What's the gift in everything? And then he converted his business into virtual, which is what he has now. And he has some live events too, but majority of his events are virtual. So I watched him literally apply everything that he teaches us real time. And I was like, I have to do more. Like I have a higher calling. And so that's when I decided to start doing the personal development seminars. And then I decided to start scaling my business. And a lot of the Lion members, I had an intervention with Tony. Tony, coached me on a specific topic where I was like playing small, and I allowed my belief systems to prevent me from being who I wanted to be in this world, which is what a lot of people do. And a lot of the Lions like forced my hand because everybody was like, all right, Ryan's theme is like, quit playing small. Like you have so much content, you have so much substance, you've been through so much adversity. Like the world needs this. Like you need the world to see this. And so then they partnered with me on a facility in Texas. They raised a ton of money for me, and they really just pushed me. They just like threw me in the deep end and was like, swim, figure it out. And so that forced me to grow. It forced me to get uncomfortable. And I've done 30 events at this point. So like, wow. It's a part of my routine. It's a part of my lifestyle. Like they say repetition is the mother of skill. Yes, but the right reps are the mother of skill. And so you want to be in proximity of somebody that has traveled down the road that you want to travel down. And so I have a ton of mentors around me that have, $500 million, $1 billion companies, and they know what it takes to scale. And the first step is like the identity of that individual. Like what's the difference between me and Steve Jobs? What he believes about himself. That's the difference. And based on what he believes about himself directly impacts the decisions that he makes. And so I started to believe differently about myself, and I started to adopt Tony's beliefs. I started to adopt all these other people around me's beliefs because they're believing in me. I don't believe in myself, but if they see something in me that I don't see, then I'm going to try what they're doing. And so that's how I've been able to really scale my business. And so I'm extremely grateful because a lot of his behaviors I've adopted. A lot of my language and a lot of my trainings and everything I do are built around what I've learned from him.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's kind of like you said that you had this relationship, or in your bio it said that you had this relationship with Tony, and many people might say that, but I had a feeling when you were telling the story and just learning so much about Tony from him, from a mind perspective of understanding how his brain works and what he sees in people. When you were telling the story, I was just like, they're friends. I was like, I know that he's got Tony on like textile. Like there's like, I could just tell like this is somebody that Tony certainly has brought in, because your story just is something that I know he emotionally gets connected with, because I've seen that from some of the events that I've watched. He really connects with people like you, and for some reason is able to empathize even if he didn't experience it. It's incredible to witness. And you guys,
I want to tell you a story. So November 2019, this is probably like my fifth event. I'm in Miami Beach, Florida. We're at the American Airlines Arena. It was the American Airlines Arena at the time. 15,000 people. Tony comes out, the place erupts. And I'm like, I'm going to speak on his stage one day. Like, I will die. That is my life's mission, is to speak on that man's stage. Fast forward, I made the decision June 2020 or July 2020 to quit playing small, started doing the personal development, started speaking on stages, started to build my brand and putting in the reps, like doing trainings at my company, doing everything and anything I can to learn this material and to be able to actually facilitate these types of seminars. October 2021, Tony has an event in Austin, Texas. It's a relationship seminar, and I was going to back out. I wasn't going to go. I was in my head. I was going through some bullshit. My old belief systems was locked in, and I was on the phone with my coach, and I was about to hang up, and he says, "Hey man, I can't wait to see you next week." And based on my response, he knew I had made the decision not to go. And he's like, "Wait a minute, why aren't you going?" And before he could even finish, I was like, "All right, I'm going to go." So I went. The last night, Tony, I'm sitting in the front row. A girl behind me is going through an intervention with Tony. Tony asks me a question because he knows I'm in recovery. He knows like my journey. And he's like, "Well, what about, let's ask Ryan." So he gives me the mic. This is my moment, right? This is my moment. I stand up. There's like 500 people in the room because it's all platinum partners. And I'll send you the pictures after. I start to literally say what Tony would say. And I literally start to do this intervention with this lady as if I was Tony. He goes nuts. He erupts. He's like jumping up and down, raising his hands. I'm like a proud child. Like he looking at, and I'll show you the pictures. Like he's smiling ear to ear. I'm literally doing the intervention. He sits down and says, "This is the real Tony. Take it from here." This went on for 2 hours. This intervention went on for 2 hours. Never been done in the history of Tony Robbins. Literally, Sage, his wife, pulls me up on stage when I was done. I was crying. He's hugging me. He's kissing me. She's hugging me. She's kissing me. They're like, "We're so proud of you. I can't believe this. Like, we've watched you from the," like, they're just like in awe, have like how I've been able to apply their teachings in my life and who I'm becoming. That was October 2021. December 2021, I'm speaking in front of 10,000 people at Date with Destiny. Like I said I would. 2 years later, it was such a magical moment, dude. Tony was like so proud of me. And then I ended up speaking in Tony's. I've had many experiences and talks on Tony's stage at this point. And so I am forever grateful for that man. Him and his wife have literally changed my life. I just did a seminar in December. I was, being celebrated by them. I have a video where Tony's kissing on me and we're hugging and we're crying. And he's like, "I love you. I'm so proud of you." And I'm like, "I love you, Dad."
Oh man, that is awesome. I'm tearing up over here. This is awesome. Like, yeah. It's incredible. And I want to go back now just for a second before I fanboy too much on you. This 85K, and Tony talks about it all the time, right? So many coaches talk about it all the time, about this investment and finding the money, because you got to do it, right? So I'm interested in plopping down the 85K and where it came from, how you were able to figure it out.
Yeah, so I literally was at the Platinum Partner booth, and I was talking to Tony Robbins' brother-in-law, which is another beautiful soul, amazing friend, mentor. And I was sitting there, and I've heard Tony at this point, I think this was like this was my first event. He actually said in that event, he said, in the moments of decisions will shape your destiny. And so that resonated with me, because I look back and I was like, how many times have I made shitty decisions and it ended up costing me much more down the road? And I was like, all right, so I have to figure this out, right? Because that's what he coaches you, right? He coaches you, during the process to make those difficult decisions, to stretch yourself. And I was like, okay, I had a company credit card, and I was like, I could put this on my company. I had business partners, and I was like, they're going to hate me. I was like, but I have to do this. And I called them and I was like, dude, I got to do this. And they're like, bro, you're crazy. This is $85K. I was like, you guys don't understand. I was like, I'll explain it to you when I get back. And, I was a good salesman, so I sold them, and I sold them on it. And dude, I had such buyer's remorse after, bro. Like, I was so scared. I was like, I tried to cancel again. I was freaking out. And they were like, look, Ryan, they're like, you can't cancel. You paid. It's on the books. Just come to the next event. And again, like, this story, like, you've been down this road again. And so I was like, you're right. And I was just scared, man. I just needed to like overcome those fears. And it's crazy, because like, fast forward, I would have never known, sitting at that booth about to make an investment that I didn't have, that my life would be where it is today. And so, like, we talk about like a higher power or something bigger than us, like that, like, if that isn't something, then I don't know what is, right? That's like, I made a decision, and it was one of the scariest decisions I've ever made. And fast forward 4.5 years, and the experience and what I have today, dude, is insane. So for those of you that are listening, if you're faced with a decision, just make the decision, execute, and just have faith that that decision is going to find you in a much better place down the road.
That is beautiful. We're gonna put a pin in the Tony Robbins conversation for now, because I know we can go. I know you got more stories to share, and we're just gonna have to have you back on for that. I'm interested in your events, because I know that you put these events on, obviously, very often. I didn't realize it was that many already in the books, as you said, of 30 events. I'm interested in these personal development seminars that you've been putting on, and what they focus on. And I know that you touched on some of it in the inner child and some of that work.
Yeah, so we've done 20 events as of now. So not only have I gone to 30 events, but I've also do 20 events on myself. And I guess I'm just saying this because I have more responsibility and I have more time dedicated to learning and growing and serving others, but I feel like I have more time than I've ever had.
Wow.
So it's wild. And so a lot of what we teach is the biological makeup of the human mind, and why we make decisions, and why we do the things that we do, and where it stems from. A lot of the stuff that I've learned from on-site and in the inner child work that I've done myself personally, and then a lot of the NLP stuff and Tony Robbins stuff. I became NLP certified, and really allowing people to see life from a different lens and to shift their belief systems. And a lot of times people don't even realize how much power and how much control they have in making decisions. Most people are victims to their environments or managers of their circumstances. And so, like, once you give somebody the tools, and Tony Robbins event for the first time, I was exposed with so much good information. I was like, I can't stop. Like, this is like, I got to continue. And that's what I did. And so my journey's just been beautiful. I just did an event, like 2 months ago at Date with Destiny, and I'm doing one in like 2 weeks, a UPW event. And then I have an event March 25th and 26th at the end of the month. And so this is an opportunity for me to really give back. And a lot of what Tony has taught me is in the gift of living is giving. And so I'm really big in, philanthropy, and we open up a non-for-profit, and a lot of the teachings that we teach at the personal development seminars, we're bringing that into schools so we can teach kids from 6th grade until when they graduate. I don't charge anything for it. It's an opportunity for me to give back. Usually we have like 60 to 100 people. It's about 20 hours, Saturday and Sunday. And it's so magical, man. You really get to see people transform just in one weekend. And like some of the feedback that I've gotten from the people that have gone, they say it's like doing 10 years of therapy in one weekend. So like you like condense time significantly. And so that's why it's so important to surround yourself with people that have gone down the road that you want to go down, because you can condense time. And I pay for speed today, right? Like I don't want to take 10 years to learn something that I can learn in one weekend. And so that's why I've been able to scale my business to where it's at today, because I've learned from people that have done this. And so I adopt their behaviors, I adopt their belief systems, I take action, I follow through with that action. And next thing you know, the life that I'm living is very similar to the life of my mentor.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. What's one of the tools that somebody can walk away with from one of your seminars?
So, I mean, there's so many. I mean, I guess the most important in my view is just the belief systems and the stories that we tell ourselves based on our life experience. And so knowing that you can shift your belief system at any time, and that's the start of everything in life, right? It's like what you believe about yourself is directly going to impact the results or the experience of your life. So like if you think of it like beliefs, like, yes, I can do this. That means, the potential that you have at that point is significantly better because you're believing you can. And then the action that you take coming from a place of like, yes, I can do this, will give you the result or the experience that you're looking for. As soon as you say, no, I can't do this, then the potential that you have at that point is that you can't do it. And your decisions are going to be different. Your actions are going to be different. And then all of a sudden, the experience of life is going to be different. The result of your life is going to be different.
I am going to take that information and apply it to my life right now. That's actually very, very, very helpful. So you're doing your own events. You're also, so you just said you're doing UPW. So you're also, I guess, on Tony's staff now at this point?
No, so I'm not. I'm still. I'm just a part of the community. I have some stuff brewing. I'm not able to share, but hopefully here in the next 4 to 6 months, something magical happens. And and so it's interesting. April of 2022. Tony actually took an hour out of his time and we had a one-on-one Zoom, which was so beautiful. He has a newborn now. And it was funny because like I'm sitting here and I'm talking with Tony and he's in his basement and like we're going back and forth. And then Sage comes in with the baby. He's like, and they're like, come on, Tony, we're going to go in the hot tub. He's like, I got to go, Ryan. I was like, all right, Tony. It was so cool, man. But I'm just a great friend and brother of his, and hopefully that materializes in something else. Like he'll always be a resource for me. I'll always have access to him, and I love him, and it's the feeling's mutual. And I've been such an instrumental piece in that community, just based on my willingness to continue to show up and to push through those fears. And so, yeah, man, it's if you haven't been to an event, I highly recommend it. I have not been to an magical. Just cut out a little bit, but you said it was magical. I have not been to an event, so I'm actually really interested in the one that you're going to be at. We'll talk more about that one offline, but I am very interested in that and learning more about the inner circle. I'm sure by the people that are in the inner circle and in the Lions, like you said, like you're making connections that also equate to just a tremendous amount in your business. And you said that already. So kind of just a recap there. This was amazing. Like, to go from this story, like, we jumped on together and I, usually I have the whole bio in front of me and I'm able to read about the person and be able to understand what they've gone through before I even start asking questions. And this is like a little transparency for our audience here. So normally I have all of that information in front of me, and for whatever reason, there was a miscommunication and I didn't get that info. But I remember I went to your website and I'm looking at the website and I'm like, all right, rehab facility. I'm like, I know this person, whoever started this. I know this Ryan guy who I can't find right now and can't figure out who he is or what he does. I know he's going to have a story and some tremendous value to share, because when I looked at the website and how much work you guys do and all of the involvement in the community and all the different programs you have going on, and it's just like, I look at that website and I go,
am I meeting with like the owner of this place, or am I meeting with like a representative? Because this thing is massive. So I just knew that if I was meeting with the founder, I was like, we're going to have a journey. We're going to have a story. And you sure did not disappoint, man. I mean, the story, everything that you've gone through, where you are today, just tremendous. I applaud you for the work and the service to everybody that you've done. Is there anything that you can share before we wrap up with our audience? Maybe a mantra or a inspirational quote that you can maybe bring this full circle for us that you live by?
Yeah. So, I've created a personal mission statement, which is one of the processes that Tony does. And so my personal mission statement is, I, Ryan, see, hear, feel, and know the purpose of my life is to love and inspire everyone to be the best versions of themselves.
And how? No,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, and how did you develop it? What you were just going to say, probably.
Yeah, no, I was at a Date with Destiny seminar, which is, it's a must. It's literally every single year, non-negotiable. I'm at Date with Destiny. It doesn't matter. I mean, you literally go through your values, you go through your human needs. You rewire your belief systems, and you literally create like a annual map of like what your year is going to look like. And it's so wild because I've been doing this for the last 4 years, and like every single time I create my plan in December, by the following December, I've like 10x'd whatever my plan was. And it's insane, man. And I've obsessed, right? Like, so I'm like, and here's another example, right? There was a time in my life when I was like, man, being an addict sucks. Well, being an addict actually doesn't suck in this situation because I've obsessed, and my addictive personality was like, I got to do more. I got to do more. 30 events later, and here I am.
That's incredible. Yeah. And so you go to Date with Destiny every year. I know that personal development is an ongoing journey, but I didn't realize that by attending it, obviously you can go more than once. I know that, but I'm just saying, to get the value out of it over and over and over again, I would have thought that at a certain point you'd be like, all right, I don't need to go again. I've gone twice. I've gone 3 times. I kind of know what the thing is. So it's different every time, I guess.
So have you ever read a book before multiple times?
No.
Have you ever watched a movie multiple times?
Yes. And actually I'll go back on the book. Yes, I have. I just can't think of one right now.
It's all good. Well, the reason I was asking is because every single time you read that book, you will find something different that you didn't see before. Every single time you watch a movie, you're going to see a part in the movie that you didn't remember last time. And so it's new levels, new devils, right? As soon as you have a moment of clarity, there's going to be a whole new challenge or problem that's going to present itself. If you have a problem, you find the solution for the problem, then it creates another problem because now you've fixed the solution to the first problem. Now you have a different set of problems, and that's life, right? So it's like repetition's the mother of skill, right? The right reps is the mother of skill. So think about it, like every single time I step into an event, I'm seeing life from a completely different perspective because of the growth that I've gone through. Or you can think of it like this, like if you're looking at a picture on a wall and you're 100 feet back, every 5 steps closer to that picture, you're going to see something different on the picture that you didn't see. And then as soon as you get all the way up to the picture, then if you get in a magnifying glass and you look at the picture through a magnifying glass, you're going to see molecules and things in the magnifying glass that you couldn't see with the human eye. And that is life's journey, right? It's like you'll never stop growing. You'll never stop learning. And Tony says something. He says, if you're not growing, you're dying. And so it's a practice now. And so it's a part of my routine. It's a part of my DNA and my makeup. And every single time I go, dude, I'm reignited. I'm literally with a completely different mindset. And I feel good, like I feel good to be able to like fully express myself, because there was a time when I would never get on a podcast and tell my story. And so the fact that I'm here just being vulnerable and open just shows you that there's a sense of acceptance and love and empathy with who I am. And so that's the journey of life, right? It's like Sage talks about, Tony's wife, like every human's journey is to come home, and to come home is to truly accept and love yourself fully. because we're always on this mission to like find something, or if we accomplish something, then we'll be accepted, or we'll feel better about ourselves. And that's the human makeup. And so once you can get to a place where you are exactly where you're supposed to be and you're at complete peace with it, then you have found the journey of life. And it's a journey, not a destination, right? Because a destination, there's an end. Journey, you never know where it's going to go. You never know where it's going to lead you.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful way to summarize all of it for me. I appreciate that. That, probably something I needed to hear today, and I really, really appreciate it. This has been just fantastic. I know that so many of our listeners maybe need to reach out to you or want to reach out to you. What are some of the best ways to find you, whether it's social media or through the website or anything like that?
Sure. So I would say go to my Instagram, which is ryan.zofay. We do all of our posts there. We give you the dates of all the seminars, and I'd love to have you. I'd love for you to be a part of the community. It's a beautiful experience. It's free. Again, it's for anybody that is struggling with anything or may have some questions about where you are in life or wanting more out of life. We provide all those tools there. And again, brother, I appreciate what you're doing. I'm so honored to be on this show with you and the opportunity to make a difference and impact somebody's life. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, you're welcome, but I'm also grateful to have a fantastic guest like yourself who, like you said, shared your personal story and was so authentic with everybody. So that's Ryan.Zofay, Zofay. And of course, it will all be in the show notes. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show today. You were just fantastic. Just an amazing guest. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to the Michael Esposito Show. For show notes, video clips, and more episodes, go to michaelespositoinc.com/podcast. Thank you again to our sponsor, Den10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. That's DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den10, you're giving back on a global scale. This episode was produced by Uncle Mike at the iHeart Studios in Poughkeepsie. Special thanks to Lara Rodrian for the opportunity and my team at Michael Esposito Inc.